Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as he watched the sleek Valorian diplomatic shuttle dock with his pride and joy. The Iron Wrench, a heavily modified human cargo hauler that he'd spent 15 years perfecting. Every bolt, every circuit, every quantum relay bore his personal touch. The ship wasn't just his livelihood, it was his masterpiece. "Captain Chen," Ambassador Zeftar's translator crackled as the tall, crystalline Valorian emerged from the shuttle. "We appreciate your vessel's availability for this urgent mission to the neutral zone." Marcus nodded, suppressing his irritation at the Valorian's condescending tone. The job paid well, transporting a delegation to negotiate a critical peace treaty between three warring species. But something felt off about the whole arrangement. "Your crew quarters are prepared," Marcus said, gesturing toward the ship's interior. "We'll reach the conference station in 48 hours. Zeftar's faceted head tilted, light refracting strangely through his translucent features. There's been a change in plans. My security team has determined that having the ship's owner aboard presents complications. You'll remain here on the station." "Excuse me?" Marcus's hand instinctively moved to the wrench hanging from his tool belt. "This is my ship. I'm the captain." "Not for this mission," Zeftar replied, smoothly. "My aide, Commander Vexilon, has extensive piloting experience. Your services are no longer required beyond the initial transport arrangement." 3 armored Valorian guards stepped forward, their energy weapons humming with barely contained power. Marcus recognized a setup when he saw one, but he also recognized when he was outgunned. With a tight smile, he handed over his command codes. "Fine," he said, "but if anything happens to my ship—" "Nothing will happen," Zeftar assured. His translator adding an artificial note of sincerity. "We'll return within the week." Marcus watched from the station's observation deck as the Iron Wrench undocked, its familiar engine signature growing distant. But as the ship disappeared into hyperspace, his expression shifted from anger to satisfaction. Let them try to run his ship without him. 18 hours into the journey, Commander Vexilon was beginning to understand why humans had such a reputation for unpredictability. The Iron Wrench was nothing like standard Valorian vessels. Every system seemed to have been jury-rigged, modified, or completely rebuilt according to some incomprehensible human logic. "Navigation is fluctuating again," reported the pilot, his crystalline fingers dancing over controls that responded in ways that defied conventional engineering. "Compensate with the auxiliary thrusters," Vexilon ordered. "I tried that. The ship's computer keeps overriding my commands." In the cargo hold, the peace delegates, representatives from 3 different species, were growing increasingly uncomfortable as the ship shuddered and lurched unpredictably. "Perhaps we should return to the station," suggested the hegemony delegate, her tentacles curling with anxiety. "Nonsense," Ambassador Zeftar declared. "These human machines are notoriously unstable, but functional enough." As if responding to his words, the lights flickered, and a grinding sound echoed through the corridors. The ship's artificial gravity wavered momentarily, causing everyone to grab for support. Vexilon frantically consulted the ship's technical manuals, but they might as well have been written in ancient Earth Sanskrit for all the sense they made. Every system was interconnected in ways that violated standard engineering principles, yet somehow worked when they worked at all. "Sir," the pilot called out, barely controlled panic in his voice. "The hyperspace motivator is showing critical instabilities, and I can't access the engineering diagnostics. They're locked behind something called Mechanics Intuition Protocol." That's when the real problems began. The emergency beacon reached Marcus 6 hours later. He was nursing a synthetic coffee in the station's cantina when his personal communicator chimed with an automated distress signal from his own ship. "Iron Wrench to any nearby vessels," the transmission began. "Experiencing multiple system failures. Hyperspace motivator critical. Life support at 60% and falling. Request immediate assistance. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. He'd designed every one of those failures himself. The Valorians had been so focused on the obvious security systems, weapons, shields, communications, that they'd completely missed the subtle dependencies he'd built into every major system. The ship would run perfectly, as long as someone who understood his modifications was aboard to maintain the delicate balance. Without his daily adjustments, the quantum flux compensators would gradually drift out of alignment. The power distribution network would develop micro-cascading failures. The environmental controls would begin prioritizing efficiency over comfort, then efficiency over survival. The iron wrench wasn't just a ship, it was an extension of Marcus himself. And like any living thing, it didn't respond well to being separated from its caretaker. Marcus finished his coffee and made his way to the docking bay where he kept his personal shuttle. Time to save some very ungrateful passengers. When Marcus materialized on the Iron Wrench's bridge via emergency transport, he found the Valorian crew in complete chaos. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles. The air recyclers wheezed with mechanical distress, and the hyperspace readings fluctuated wildly between catastrophic and impossible. "Captain Chen!" Vexilon rushed toward him, his usual Valorian composure completely shattered. "Thank the ancestors you're here. We can't understand these systems. They don't follow any logical engineering principles." Marcus rolled up his sleeves and moved to the primary engineering console. His fingers danced over controls that had confounded the Valorians, inputting adjustment sequences he knew by heart. "That's because they're not logical," he said, rerouting. Power through backup channels and stabilizing the hyperspace field with movements that looked more like conducting an orchestra than operating machinery. "They're intuitive. You have to feel the ship's rhythms, understand her moods." Within minutes, the grinding sound ceased, the lights steadied. The artificial gravity returned to normal, and the ship's various complaints faded to contented mechanical purrs. Ambassador Zeftar appeared on the bridge, his crystalline features somehow managing to convey both relief and embarrassment. "Captain Chen, we may have acted hastily." "You may have," Marcus agreed, not looking up from his repairs. "Lucky for you, I take care of my ship, and anyone aboard her, even people who try to steal her." As the Iron Wrench resumed course toward the peace conference, Marcus reflected on the peculiar relationship between humans and their machines. Other species built ships to exact specifications, following rigid protocols and standardized procedures. But humans? They created partnerships with their technology, intimate relationships that transcended mere operation and maintenance. The Valorians had learned a valuable lesson about human engineering and human nature. Sometimes the most important component in any system isn't found in the technical specifications. Sometimes it's the heart of the person who built it.